sometimes mock the concept of the must-win because we throw it out there more so than we should. But there are 4 teams in the NFC racing for that 6th playoff spot right now. Every game counts. Dak said it's important because it's the next game. But is he right that this is a must-win game for the Dallas Cowboys?
It is, and it's that time, too, because if there was a margin of error in the NFL season, typically that margin of error comes at the beginning, because you have the games you can make up. Now, there are teams that do have a margin error. Those are the teams that were successful. Philadelphia, they do have a margin error. Pittsburgh, they do have a margin error. New England, they do have a margin error. The Rams, they do have a margin error because they have. The Cowboys, that's evaporated. It's evaporated based on also how good the Eagles have been. And given the suspension and the injuries, how do they win this football game? You know, so Dak realized the magnitude of it. And then the thing that I like most of all is, regardless of what their records are, this is one of the best rivalries in the NFL. This is how I came into the NFL, playing against the Cowboys, playing against the Redskins, playing against the Giants. That's one thing Buddy Ryan said. You need to know who your rivals are. You need to know who you need to beat. Now, starting the season, Cowboys had no clue where the Eagles were going to be. But right now, the Eagles are right in their sights. What can they do? They have an opportunity to derail the Eagles from having a sensational season, at least putting a little damper on it late in November. How they're going to be able to do that, I don't know, but Dak knows the magnitude. No, we're in the part of the season, Jen, in November. Yeah, there's a lot of must-win, so we can utilize it. We have utilized it in the right places, but now it's not over-exaggerating. It's not overhyping the game. If Dallas does not win this game, they start off the 6-game suspension 0-2. So where is their head at if they were to lose this game? That's what I would ask you, Nick.
Before I answer your question on that, to answer this, I think Dak made a mistake here calling this a must-win. Because I think you put your team in a rough spot if you as the leader, you as the quarterback, say we have to win this football game, and then you lose this football game. You do start out 0-2 with the suspension when your season isn't over.
Okay, but a lot of times when you hear a team leader speak, you know what he's repeating? He's repeating exactly what the coach has said to the team. So a lot of times the leaders of the team, you want to have one voice that echoes the same thing. So a lot of times I would only say must win when the coach said must win, so the other players know it's a must win situation.
I agree. If Dak is saying for us to have any shot at winning the NFC East, we have to win this game, well, that's obviously true. And by the way, even if they win this game, they are a huge underdog to win the NFC.
Must win when the coach said must win, so the other players know it's a must win situation.
I agree. If Dak is saying for us to have any shot at winning the NFC East, we have to win this game, well, that's obviously true. And by the way, even if they win this game, they are a huge underdog to win the NFC East. They would still, even though they would be 1-0 on the Eagles, they'd still be 2 games back in the standings. The question is, can the Cowboys get to the requisite 10 wins I think it's going to take to make the playoffs in the NFC? And they can lose this game and still do that. After this game, they will be favored in at least their next 3 and maybe their next 4.
From a probability standpoint, what do you think is more probable? Them winning this game or them losing this game, going 5-5 and getting 5 wins out of their last 6 games?
I think it's more likely that they were to win this game than to go 5-1 down the stretch is what you're asking me.
So it is a must-win then for them.
I don't think so, because we all said when Zeke was suspended that what they had to do to stay afloat was 3-3 minimum. That they had to go at least 3-3.
But I think the Falcons was a game you had them winning.
I did have them winning. Absolutely right. So if we look at the stretch after Philly, home for the Chargers, home for Washington, at the Giants. Like, those games, they will be favored in all 3 of those games. And then the last game without Zeke at Oakland, I don't know what the spread.
First of all, let's go back. Mm-hmm. Did you see the Dallas team that was on the field last week?
Yes, I did.
Okay, now that's not a team that I got a lot of confidence against the Chargers, against the Red. Like, how are they going to block Joey Bosa and Ingram?
It's a fair point. I'm also not certain, and I don't think you are either, that Tyron Smith's not going to be playing the rest of the way.
Yeah, but I know he's going to be banged up.
But hasn't he been banged up most of the year? I mean, it was a back before and now it's a groin, but I don't feel like Tyron Smith's been fully healthy all year.
Yes, but when an NFL player can't play, All right? That's significant. And this was the first time that he couldn't play.
The reason that I said I just think it's a dangerous thing for Dak to do is because I do think this is, and people say, Nick, you don't like the Eagles. I'm not ready to say they're clearly the NFL's best team, but they're clearly a very good team. And I think when you position yourself as saying we have to win this football game, in a game you are a 3.5-point underdog, and I think you probably should be a 5.5 or 6-point underdog. You are positioning your team for something of an emotional letdown. Now, you're saying that message coming from even above Dak, from the very top down, from Jason Garrett on down, maybe it's a mistake by them. I don't think it's fair for me to say, and maybe I was wrong in the beginning, the Cowboys have to go 3-3 without Zeke. But if they go 0-2 to start off, they're screwed, when the beginning of this was always going to be harder than the end of this. We always knew these first two games, Atlanta and Philly, were going to be harder than the next two games, the Chargers and Washington, or the following two games. Before we started calculating that, Nick, we were thinking they were going to have 150 yards rushing. We didn't think their left tackle was going to be gone. We didn't know Sean Lee was going to be gone for several games. You didn't even calculate. They got 3 games in basically 11 days. All right, like how's this football team going to be able to do that? So you have to put all that in the equation. They're not really talented without those players. So they're not better than Washington. They're not better than the Chargers.
Oh. You also have to factor in the intangibles. So everything he said, plus you drop to this team, who's a healthy team, coming off a bye, who's had a lot of rest, a strong team that could actually do some damage to this Cowboys team. Now they're coming off 2 really bad losses. Now to run the table, to go the next couple ways, like think about, yes, physically they're not going to have a lot of plays. Yes, what is their mindset? And now you find yourselves in a hole, and you really have to.
I guess, and it's funny because I'm usually the guy in like week 4 saying, got to win this game. Like, I don't see how you recover from it. Now we're in week 11, and I'm pumping the brakes on it. But I do think the context of what we're discussing, if the conversation is, can the Cowboys make the playoffs? Well, Seattle and Atlanta.
That's all to come, because they're not going to win the division.
Agreed.
That's the only conversation.
Exactly right. Seattle and Atlanta are playing each other this week, right? So it's the teams shooting for that 6th playoff spot. If you guys are comfortable with me saying Carolina's going to either win their division or be the first wild card, there's 4 teams shooting for that 6th playoff spot. Detroit, who I have no faith in, Seattle, Atlanta, and Dallas. So if Atlanta wins this week, even if Dallas loses, they're 1 game back. Like even if Detroit wins this week, then it's the Cowboys at 5-5, and those other teams at 6-4.
Even with 1 game back, they still got 4 more games with Zeke being suspended. Sean Lee might not be back for several games. Jason Garrett, the coach, said this might take some time. So I don't think the Dallas team that we're putting on the field. You're putting a different team in your mind on the field.
Maybe I am for the weeks following this Philly game. Like, I'm not ready to say Tyron Smith forget the Philly game, moving after the Philly game, this Thanksgiving game against the Chargers. The Chargers, correct?
You think Joey Bosa and Ingrid, like you think on Thanksgiving, after 4 days rest, after being out a week, you think he's going to be feeling good on Thanksgiving?
Well, what if he doesn't play on Sunday? And then he's had 2 weeks, so it's not 4 days.
No, let me tell you something. No, don't look at it that way. That's wrong. Because if he doesn't play on Sunday against the Eagles, that means his injury was more severe. The Eagles game is more important than the Chargers game on Thanksgiving.
Yeah, you know what I know you're going to say because it's divisional.
No, don't say you know what I'm going to say.
Okay, all right. I think I know that you're going to say I'm crazy on this. I don't think the Eagles game is more important than the Chargers game because I don't think I think they're done with being able to win the division. You could play a really good game and lose to Philly. You have to beat the Chargers at home. Just like the following week, you have to beat Washington at home, and the following week, you have to beat the Giants at home. I'm just trying to figure out how they can get to the 10 wins. I think they can get to the 10 wins without beating Philly. Tell me if I'm wrong here, CC. I feel like you're skeptical about whether or not they can get to the 10 wins regardless because of all these injuries.
I'm just looking at the roster. Like, you keep looking at the schedule. I'm looking at the roster. Like, they are not a good team without those other players. How are they going to generate points? How are they going to stop the run? Like, San Diego has given teams fits this year. Like, in thinking that the Thanksgiving game, that game right there.
Not just fits. They're tied for 2nd in the league in sacks. So the Cowboys don't get through they don't get through the Eagles. They've got a tall task ahead of them. But we're going to take a break first. Coming up, we're going to switch gears, talk a little basketball.